Good morning and welcome to our final day of the 2020 Williamson County Caregiver Conference. My name is Rob Fabian with Age of Central Texas. We are so proud to be your host once again for this 7th annual Caregiver Conference. And we are so glad that you're joining us today because we have got some great information that we're going to share. We have a wonderful presentation with Rob Colgate, who's going to talk about writing and using that as a tool in our caregiving journey. Before we get started, have a quick video we want to show you. We have a welcome from our Executive Director, Suzanne Anderson, along with some great information from our presenting sponsor, who is Baylor Scott & White.
Hi all, my name is Suzanne Anderson. I am the Executive Director of Age of Central Texas. Welcome to the Williamson County Caregiver Conference. We are so very glad that you're with us today. I know that you're not used to attending conferences virtually, so it's sort of a new experience for us all. But I wanted to make sure that you knew that AGE continues to be committed to providing needed information and resources and support to caregivers, and certainly during this very, very challenging time. So we appreciate your participation and hope you enjoy the day. Thank you again.
At Baylor Scott & White Health, there's nothing more important to us than your well-being. Over the last several weeks, we've done a number of modifications to our emergency room so you can continue to get the care you need when you need it. We're regularly cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces in our lobbies and patient areas. When you arrive, a screener will check your temperature, and we're requiring everyone to wear masks. When it comes to registration, we've got a no-touch process. You'll just answer a few simple questions. We'll get you back to our room as quickly as possible. We want you to be well informed and not ignore symptoms that could indicate a potentially serious condition. In those situations, it's critical you don't delay. To learn more about all we're doing to help keep you safe, visit bswhealth.com/safecare.
All right, thank you, Suzanne, and thank you, Baylor Scott & White. Before we get started this morning, I want to go over just a few housekeeping issues. As Suzanne noted, this is our first time that we've been doing virtual conferences this year. So if we have a few little hiccups along the way, please forgive us. We're learning as we go. But we are recording all of our sessions. So if for any reason you get knocked out during the session, if you have problems with your internet on your end, don't worry. We're recording the sessions and we're posting them all on YouTube. We're also posting the links to those on the website at Age of Central Texas for the Williamson County Caregiver Conference. So you can go back to the website where you registered. You can find the links to all of them, or simply just go to YouTube and search for Age of Central Texas. We're also going to send you the links to all of the sessions at the end of the conference later on, either today or tomorrow, so you'll be able to go back, look at them again if you want to, share them with friends, utilize them however you would like. We're also going to share with you the PDFs of the PowerPoints that our speakers have utilized. That way you don't feel like you're having to take notes the whole time. So we'll send those to you as well, so you'll have those as reference. When you received your email to remind you about the session, we also sent you links to the program, which we invite you to please go take a look at, because there's lots of great information there, not only from our sponsors, but also the bios for all of our speakers. We also sent you some resources, some caregiver resources. So we pulled together a lot of great resources for you. So take a look at those as well. Because remember, the reason that we're doing these conferences is for you. We want to make sure that you have all the information, resources, education, everything you need to be successful in your journey as a caregiver. To that end, we're also going to send you a survey at the end of the conference. We really would like you to fill out the survey because we read every single survey. Honestly, we do. We use that information to guide us to creating next year's conferences. We want to know from you, what did you like? What did we do right? What did we miss that you needed? And what are the topics that are most of interest to you? And we're going to go out and find the expert speakers to talk to those subjects. So be sure and fill out the survey, because it really does help guide us to continue bringing the best information we can for you so that we can help you in your journey wherever you are in that journey. Finally, During today's session, we want you to communicate back. So right down here on your screen, you have a chat feature. It says chat. It looks like one of those thought bubbles that you see in the comic strips. Click on that and type in your questions during the session. Rob is actually going to ask you some questions and have you communicate back. So use that chat feature. At the end of today's session, we're going to answer your questions. So be sure and ask those questions during the session, and even when it's over, ask the questions, because we want to be able to answer your personal questions. This is your opportunity to have an expert here that can talk to you directly about what you personally are going through as a caregiver and help you with that. So be sure and ask those questions because we're going to answer them. Because our time is a little limited today and we are going to honor our end time of 11:30, if we get a lot of questions going and we run out of time, we're still going to answer your questions. Either Rob or someone from Age of Central Texas is going to answer them directly back to you. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. We're certainly going to answer them for you. All right, let's get rolling. We're so excited this morning to have Rob Colgate with us. We, as caregivers, are always told, take care of yourself. You've got to take care of yourself. And as caregivers, we hear that so much that it just kind of rolls in one ear and out the other, because we know that our time is filled with being caregivers. Where do we find the time to take care of ourselves? And if we do find some time, what should I do? We're going to give you some tools today to address exactly that. How to use writing to help us in our caregiving journey. Rob is a poet and an educator. He holds a degree in psychology and neuroscience from Yale University. And in fact, for his senior thesis, he conducted research on the emotional effects of reading poetry on a negative mood. He has taught writing at Northwestern University and here at the University of Texas. He currently teaches creative writing through the Library Foundation's Badger Dog program and serves as the nonfiction editor for Bat City Review. And he recently published his first book called So Dark the Gap. And he is currently centering his studies around the exploration of intersection between mental disability and how creative writing can act as a source of revelation. So we're so excited to have Rob Colgate with us this morning. Rob, if you will share your screen and unmute yourself, I am going to turn it all over to you and let you start our session. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Great. Thank you, Rob. And thank Age, so much thanks for Age for giving me the chance to be here and talk with you all today. So like Rob said, my name is Rob Colgate, and I'm a teaching artist in creative writing for Badger Dog through the Austin Library Foundation. So I just want to give a little introduction and an overview before we sort of dive into things. I'll be later in the presentation using the chat quite liberally. So feel free and ready and excited to be putting things into that chat. So I'll introduce myself, we'll go over the session, and we'll sort of slide into the presentation. So I studied psychology and neuroscience when I was an undergrad, but my real passion was sort of in writing and creative writing and in poetry. And so I was always looking for ways to connect those two seemingly disparate parts of my life. And what really happened was over the course of, year after year of studying psych, studying counseling, studying how the brain works, and then reading, writing poetry, nonfiction, fiction, workshops, seminars, all of these things, it came to light that these were not so far apart, and in fact really closely intertwined, the ideas of emotion and psychology along with writing. So now I'm currently studying poetry at UT, getting my MFA, and I also have begun studying disability studies so we can think about psychology and mental health from a disability framework as opposed to just a medical one. So that's sort of where my interests lie. And I the intersection between emotional intelligence and writing is something that's really important to me. So I'm super excited that y'all are interested in learning how we can sort of capitalize on these two to take care of ourselves. So I'm going to talk about emotions and writing for a little bit, do some presenting, talk about emotional intelligence itself as a construct, what it is, why it's important. And then the sort of last bigger chunk of this will be interactive writing exercises to sort of practice these emotional intelligence skills, get us thinking about how we can use writing in different ways to develop our emotion recognition, emotion labeling, emotion understanding, and sort of get all the benefits that come from taking care of ourselves emotionally. All right, so I'd love to check in with everyone first. If you can all go in the chat, and I want to know what sort of landscape you are today. Imagine we're building a whole planet together. What landscape on that planet do you feel like today? Are you a frozen tundra, a field of chamomile, suburban? Maybe you are something not on here. Maybe you're just hill country. Maybe you're a big grassy meadow. I would love for us to sort of share what we identify as today in terms of a landscape. So take a minute, figure that out, and then this is also to get ourselves sort of ready to use the chat. So what sort of landscape are you? And if you can make this up, it can go anywhere, it can be real or not real. And then just pop that in the chat. So I'll give y'all a couple seconds to do that, get acquainted with the chat. A deep hole, we have a field of chamomile. Good, I love the range already. Rocky Mountain, whew. Snow-covered mountains, a lot of good mountains here. Front lawn, ocean, grasslands, incredible. Just thinking about our whole little group here as a planet, and what a wonderful place that would be to roam around. Well, fabulous. Y'all can keep popping those in the chat. We have pebbles, we have Texas itself, smooth waves, excellent, right? So just getting our minds sort of in that more creative space. We have folks out in the ocean, that's great. It doesn't have to be realistic, it doesn't have to be logical, just trying to get ourselves into creative frame of mind, thinking of ourselves as a landscape. Fabulous. I am loving all these answers, and I'm loving too that the Zoom chat is really working for us and people are able to add. Can I be on another planet? Absolutely. Let's all make our own planets, right? Expanding the mind in that sort of creative writing way. So I'm glad we've got these little metaphors going. And let's keep moving forward. So I want to talk about emotions themselves. We obviously sort of know what they are, but to get into sort of the technical nitty-gritty of it, emotions are qualified as immediate, short-lived responses to something that happens in the environment or something that's evoked in the mind. So these are our responses to occurrences. And emotions will cause shifts in our thinking. We might think, oh, I like this, or I dislike this. Emotions will cause shifts in our physiology, so how our body responds. There's a very physical part of emotion. Breathing, heart rate, hormones, maybe you're sweating, maybe you're shaking, you've got a headache or something. Excuse the noise outside my window. We love a little work from home moment, right? So emotions, thinking, physiology. There's also expression. So how do we physically show the emotion in a voluntary way as opposed to physiology involuntary? We have facial expressions, body language, vocal tone, sort of the outer signs of the emotion. And then there's also behavior, things that we do when we are experiencing emotions. There's the idea of fight or flight, engaging an emotion or leaving it, approach or avoid. So emotions are these immediate responses in our brain that trigger sort of a whole host of signs and representations of that emotion. So if we're understanding emotions as these responses with all these different little characteristics, why are they important? Why do we really care about emotions? Um, Emotions are evolutionarily, biologically, scientifically developed to have purpose. We wouldn't keep having them naturally if they weren't doing anything for us. So emotions, they signal valuable information to energize required behaviors. Our emotions are there to cause those characteristics, to cause those follow-ups, and they guide us through rational decision making, wisdom, being smart, positive emotions. They sort of broaden our thoughts and actions. So the idea of when you're joyful, you're happy, you're excited, it sort of broadens the range of what you're gonna do. Maybe you're gonna go and you're gonna write a book, or you're gonna go and you're gonna call a friend, or you're gonna go and you're gonna go on a jog. And these positive emotions sort of open us up to doing a lot of different things that we might not otherwise be motivated to do. And on the flip side, negative emotions, they narrow our thoughts or actions, but in a really meaningful way. Um, for example, anxiety. When you're feeling anxious, your range of actions that you want to do are suddenly all narrowed to how do I get rid of this anxiety? When you're miserable and sad, you're not, excited to go and push the limits, right? Your actions sort of tailor themselves. You want to get rid of whatever's making me anxious, whatever's making me sad. So our emotions are guiding how we interact with the world. They're helping us go and try new things, and they're helping us focus on what we need to get done. So they're not just sort of these things that bubble inside of us but have no practical implications in the real world. Emotions are actually the most practical thing that we experience, the most practical way of engaging with our environments. So that's sort of a gloss on emotions. I want to talk a little bit about emotions and writing. I want to give you guys some sort of scientific research that shows that emotions and writing have sort of an inherent psychological scientific connection to them. So this is a couple of studies about writing and specifically empathy as an emotional construct. So one study had medical students and doctors talking, and they were talking about caregiving to patients. So they would speak about a particular poem, have this conversation, and what they found was after talking about these poems, that the students spoke about the poems that were shared by the doctors. And after doing this, they felt like they self-reported to have developed more empathy for understanding what it's like to be a patient for the patients that they were actually working with. A similar study over in Hong Kong had students actually tasked to create poetry and art. Some did different sorts of creative writing that wasn't poetry. And they were told to do this art sort of in response to working with these patients who weren't doing so well. And again, we got the same sort of result, which showed that empathy was really being developed by specifically engaging with art that related to the caregiving situation that these medical students were in. So whether it was reading, discussing, writing, creating something visual, by sort of indulging in that creative aspect, um, empathy was able to be developed. The caregiving relationship became a bit more natural and fluid because of how this art guided the engagement with it. There was also some studies on writing and anxiety. Um, a case study published a few years ago was studying an adolescent girl who became very anxious when she had a spinal surgery coming up. And so she started writing poems. And I know I've had a lot of content about poems in particular, but these things really do apply across the spectrum to writing and creative writing and all sorts of genres. And so she started writing poetry in response to her fear about her surgery, sort of talking about what would happen, what could happen, what she hoped wouldn't. And they found a sort of cathartic release. And some of this may seem sort of obvious, like you vent about something, you write about it, and you feel better. But that's not just an effect that we all may have noticed in our lives, or we may have seen happen for other people. There have been sort of rigorous scientific studies that are showing that this connection is inherent, that writing and emotion are connected, and that writing can really help us master our emotions. So, my own research, even last year, this is more on reading than writing, but they're very similar constructs. Um, Last year, or I guess it's 2 years ago at this point, my goodness, I conducted a study sort of examining the effects of reading poetry on negative mood. And what we found was that poetry, rather than improving or worsening a mood, helped folks really maintain the current mood that they were in. And this is sort of has exciting implications because it suggests that by sitting and reading a piece of creative writing, or even by extension, sitting down and doing some writing, it sort of keeps you in the emotion you're in at the moment, where otherwise you might run away or suppress or repress. And instead, by engaging with creative writing, it allows us to sit with and process these difficult emotions that might otherwise we might be a bit scared away from. So writing is also helpful a way when you're frustrated, when you're sad, when you're stressed, and you're sort of unsure of how to deal with it, so you're pushing it aside. Reading and writing really has a way of allowing you to grip on to that emotion and figure out, okay, what is this? What's going on? How am I going to grapple with it? So that's sort of my gloss on emotions and emotions in writing. And I want to talk just a little bit about emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence, we hear the phrase thrown around a lot, probably, but it actually has its own sort of rigorous scientific framework and definition. And it's sort of most technically defined as the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions. So, emotional intelligence is this idea that we're in touch with our emotions. We know what they look like. We know our own emotional patterns. We know how we might cover them up or express them differently, how we might regulate, and we have a vocabulary to talk about it. So, really, just becoming more knowledgeable about emotions as a larger construct. So, emotional intelligence can be broken down to five major skills, acronymed as RULER. So, recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions are the five major skills of emotional intelligence. If you learn how to engage with each one of these five skills, your emotional intelligence will go through the roof. You'll be like the only emotional genius, right? And so I want to break down these five skills. But before we go into that, I want to talk just a little bit about why it might be important to develop these five skills. Obviously, we know what emotions are. We know emotions are important. We know writing can help us handle emotions. But why does it matter? Why do we even want to do any of this way? Well, studies have shown that lower emotional intelligence is associated with some not so great characteristics and tendencies. There's aggressive behavior, poor quality relationships, excessive drug, alcohol, and tobacco usage, higher rates of anxiety and depression. The correlation between lower emotional intelligence and sort of these negative outcomes is pretty apparent and has been scientifically tested quite a few times. But what about higher emotional intelligence? What sort of results are going to come from that? What correlations are we going to see? Well, we'll see higher empathy and well being, stronger interpersonal relationships, higher satisfaction at work and at school, increased academic achievement for those in school, increased workplace achievement for those working, holding leadership positions in the workplace, increased social skills, improved school and work climate, decreased anxiety and depression, better physical health outcomes, leadership skills and attention. And we even found that relationships specifically that may have sort of a teacher student, mentor, mentee, caregiver, care receiver relationships um, are a lot stronger. Folks aren't getting burnt out of each other. There's a little more respect, and there's more positivity about teaching or about caregiving or about um, sort of this interaction. So obviously emotional intelligence an important thing to develop, and we understand that emotions are connected with writing such that when we write, we can do it as a way to develop our emotional intelligence. So baseline, emotions are important. If we write about emotions, we know they're connected, and so it becomes a way for us to develop our emotional intelligence. So we're now going to move into the interactive portion. We're going to do 5 interactive exercises, one for each skill. We'll spend about 10 minutes on each. So we'll do maybe 5 to 6 minutes of sort of writing and then a little bit of sharing. Folks can pop stuff in the chat and I'll choose some to talk about. So the first step of emotional intelligence, recognizing emotions. So it's being able to identify emotions in yourself and in others by interpreting some different features: facial expression, body language, vocal tone, thoughts, physiology, and context. So when we feel an emotion, all of these 6 features are activated. So why do we want to recognize emotions? It sort of provides us information to approach or avoid. If you can tell someone is frustrated, you're going to approach them differently. It helps us enhance relationships and our communication, understanding where people are at. It facilitates social interaction, and it helps us sort of understand the norms and values of ours and other cultures. So seeing how emotions present in people can give us a lot of insight into our interactions. So for this exercise, we are going to modify it a bit. I had originally intended this for folks who were on screen with video, but we're not going to do it that way. What I want y'all to do is choose one of the emotions on this list. We have 12 emotions listed here. And I want you to take, you know, about 5 minutes. You can be a little more, a little less, doesn't matter too much. And write down sort of a description of these emotions. So choose one, and what does the face look like? The body language. What are people saying? What is happening in the body? And pop that in the Zoom chat without the name of the emotion, and I'll read some out loud, and we'll see if we can recognize the emotions just by how you all describe them. So here are the emotion words, and again, face, body language, vocalizations, thoughts, physiology. So take a couple minutes, describe an emotion through all these sort of directions, and then when you're ready, you can pop it in the chat, and I will read some of them out loud, and we'll see if we can figure out what emotion it is just by describing what's going on with it. So some descriptive writing practice. Okay, so I'll give us all a few moments, and when you're ready, you can just pop it into the chat. All right. We'll give it just one more minute to pop things in the chat, and then I will read a few. I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far. Okay, so I want to talk about a few of these. Really great job sort of engaging with these different aspects of emotions. And these are practical things you can do to help yourself recognize emotions. So if you're in a stressed emotional state, take stock of what facial expressions, body language, vocalizations are happening. It'll help you recognize what emotions you're in. So I see one answer: rolling of eyes, smirk, looking away, unpleasant facial expression, possibly the folding of arms, a cold tension, dismissive aura, and a tense or terse vocabulary, right? So that definitely points me more towards some negative feelings. And I would say that one brings us to disgusted, right? Sort of the idea of the smirk, the tension, the folding of the arms sort of implies that there's a gap between the folks interacting with this emotion, right? So we're able to sort of pick up on these sort of outward features of emotion. I have another description of an emotion. The blood rushes to the face, red face, tight, tense, loud, clenched jaw, fist clenched. So a lot of clenching, tightness, right? Definitely points us sort of to the idea of anger. These are things we can be noticing as we're going. If you notice there's a lot of tension in your body, your blood is rushing, you're clenching your jaw, you might go, oh shoot, this is what happens when I'm angry. And I didn't even realize how angry I was until I took stock of these things. Let's do maybe a bit more of a happier one. We have laid back, breath is even and calm, facial expression is pleasant, mouth is turned up, eyes are wide and clear with a sparkle. The body language is upright and the movement is that of a dancer. Gorgeous description here, right? So let's dig into a bit of it. Even and calm breath, a pleasant facial expression, mouth turned up, eyes wide and clear, and then this idea of sort of being like a dancer. For me, I'm getting really carefree from this. There's the smile, there's a lightness and a levity. And this is also really helpful with positive emotions when we realize like I'm carrying myself kind of loose. I'm breathing easy and being able to identify, hey, I feeling kind of carefree right now can help you seize onto it, appreciate it, and be activated by that to maintain the emotion and go and try new things. So I really love everything that people put into the chat. Um, and I think it's just wonderful doing this exercise because writing down what's going on with the emotion can help you understand the emotion in a much bigger context. So really excellent work with this writing here. I'm going to move now into the idea of understanding emotions. Again, a little bit of gloss and then a writing exercise, something practical. So understanding emotion means being conscious of how your emotions influence your thinking, behavior, perceptions, memory, and judgment. It's having the knowledge that emotions have causes and consequences and that they change and progress, right? So we've been able to recognize an emotion. Now we got to understand it. Okay, I noticed all these things. I know I'm angry. What do I do with that? What do I know about being angry? Emotions shape our desires, affect our mental resources. They sort of focus us on what to do next, and they affect how we retain information. So I want to break out this little tool. It was in the handout if y'all got that before the presentation. And this is called the mood meter. It's an emotional intelligence tool developed at Yale. And the axes are energy and pleasantness. So there's high energy, unpleasant feelings, right? Those are sort of the angry emotions. But they might be useful in things like a debate, a competition, self-defense. They're useful times to feel unpleasant and high energy. In the lower left, it's low energy and pleasant. These are sort of the sad emotions. But sadness can be useful in apologizing, reflecting on mistakes, or consoling someone. So when we're feeling sad, recognizing that, well, maybe this is activating some important behaviors. In the lower right, high pleasantness but low energy, sort of the calm emotions, those are really helpful when you're falling asleep, you're trying to concentrate on something you're reading, maybe you're having sort of a simple conversation with someone. It can be really good to be pleasant but low energy. And then happy emotions, high energy, high pleasantness. These are great if you're meeting new people, you're exercising, working as a team, you're trying to cheer someone up, you're trying to, uplift in your work as caregivers. So understanding that each quadrant of this mood meter, no matter how much energy or pleasantness an emotion has, it can be useful. So I want us now to do a little bit more writing about some of these emotional pairs. And this is an exercise I encourage y'all to do on your own time too. And it's talking about the difference between emotions. Sometimes we might be like, I am so furious with Rebecca for what she did. And we write a little bit about it and we realize maybe I'm not furious, maybe I'm just frustrated, or maybe I'm hurt, and we recognize it's coming from a bit of a different place. So for the next few minutes, choose one of these axes, these sort of pairings, and write down how they're different. How do you express them differently? How do they come up in different conversations? Being able to understand emotions by telling them apart like this can be incredibly useful for developing our emotional intelligence because we're able to more clearly locate where we are with our emotions. So again, another few minutes and try to tell these emotions apart in your writing. And pop them in the chat when we're done, and then I'll do another little gloss over with it. All right. I'd love to see what folks have started working on. And again, this is nothing serious. This isn't school. No one's graded or anything. But would love to see in the chat as we start wrapping up how people are telling these different emotions apart and how being able to identify slight emotional differences can help us. So I have one answer for the difference between pleased and ecstatic. Pleased is more calm, more passive, and controlled. You're pleased with your morning cup of coffee. While ecstatic is more aggressive and assertive and demonstrative, like you just won something. Really great. So we're recognizing there's a little bit of an energy difference between pleased and ecstatic. And we're also recognizing that there might be different situations. Pleased is maybe more day to day, and ecstatic is maybe a bit larger, a bit less frequent. And so just being able to notice, okay, where exactly am I in terms of energy levels? How would I refer to this as a different situation? Can be really, really helpful. I also have a difference between discouraged and hopeless. Um, uh, where we have one participant saying discouraged is expressed by complaining about situation, where hopeless is when something has been taken away, there's a loss or a failure. So this can be really good for helping us sort of keep things in perspective as well. Um, are you discouraged? Are you sort of down in the dumps? Or are you hopeless? Has something really been stolen away from you? And it's good perspective in both directions. If you realize, okay, maybe I'm just discouraged, but I'm not hopeless. Maybe there's still something I can seize onto here. You might be able to sort of pull yourself out of a funk. And similarly, if you're trying to be like, no, I'm not totally hopeless, I'm just discouraged, it can be difficult not fully addressing that emotion. So being able to sort of write about exactly what sort of emotions you're experiencing and how they're different can be really, really helpful in sort of locating yourself in emotional space. You're like, okay, not all hope is lost. Or you're like, okay, I don't want to pretend that I'm not as sad as I am. And there's a lot of power in that. So writing in order to tell apart similar emotions is really powerful because it gets us more in touch with what we're doing. Just writing about what you are experiencing in that moment can already lead to all these revelations. So really wonderful answers there. And I hope folks are, you know, as they're writing on their own, sort of getting something out of this, even if it doesn't make it to the chat. So I want to keep us moving. And I want to talk about labeling emotions now, which is maybe perhaps the one that is most connected to language. So labeling emotions means having a sophisticated vocabulary to describe the full range of emotions by making connection between the experience and the word. So it's just having the words to say it. Um, we can't understand and talk about emotions without actually having those words. There's almost 2,000 words in this language that refer to emotions. So when we're labeling them, we want to remember some emotions are pretty basic, straightforward. Um, Others will sort of progress. Annoyance becomes anger, becomes rage. Some are complex, shame, guilt, and pride. They're not as straightforward as happiness or sadness. And sometimes emotions will blend together. Anger and disgust will create a unique emotional experience. So we really want to think about having the words to say what's going on. I want to talk about metaphors a little bit in creative writing. So often metaphors are really helpful in describing emotions. A metaphor, I'm sure we all know, but it's a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or applied to an emotion, which it's not literally applicable. So a few emotional metaphors, I carry the burden of guilt. You're not physically carrying anything on your body, but the metaphor helps us to understand the way that guilt feels like it weighs us down. Similarly, shame weighs me down, or I'm brimming over with rage. That idea that you're a full vessel with water about to spill over of rage. This idea of being filled and full of love, I'm empty inside. Maybe some metaphors about heat. There's I'm boiling with anger. She's an ice queen. I'm cold-hearted. And then there are some that are a lot more physical, feeling you can explode or erupt, hurt, torn apart, suffocated, crushed, sort of talking about emotions in very physical ways, if there's something that really happened to our body. So, coming up with metaphors or words to label our emotions is so powerful because so often we're sitting there and we know things don't feel right, don't feel good, but we don't quite know why. And the ability to say, like, okay, I I am angry, that's the word for it. Or if we're able to be like, I feel like my stomach is turning with this sort of rage, then just being able to label that makes us so much more in touch with these emotions. So for this next exercise, I want you all to choose an emotion from this mood meter. This was also on the handout if it's too small here. I hope y'all can read it. So choose an emotion, maybe one that you have been experiencing recently, and come up with a metaphor for it. Or if you don't want to do a metaphor, just describe what the experience of that specific emotion is like. And you can get real creative writing poetic with this. My anger is a boot, I'm calm like purple. Nothing has to totally make sense. But then I would love choose some emotions and come up with a way of describing them that just makes sense. For me, I know when I feel sad, I sort of feel like my brain is melting. That's how I talk about it. So for you, and this is a little bit of creative juices, moving forward past just maybe journal writing and really getting a little more creative with it. So come up with some metaphors or new ways of talking about feelings you feel a lot. And when you're ready, you can drop some in the chat and I can share a few with our group here. I'm getting some great metaphors and images here. Um, we'll give you guys a little more time and then I'll share some. Okay, I've gotten a lot of really incredible answers here, so I'll just read through some. I am secure like a napping kitten. Wonderful. Restless is feeling like you're on a long, winding road and you don't know where you're going. I'm as proud as a chicken that just laid an egg. I am relaxed like a hammock in the breeze. When I feel alienated, I feel like a prisoner with no way out. I'm as frustrated as a lion in captivity, tranquil like a puddle after a storm. Serene feels like hovering in a place of gratitude. Holding a grandchild is like holding a slice of heaven. Someone says, I'm in all the orange and red sign. I find no happy moments. Just saying, I feel orange and red. Panic, I feel like I'm going to jump out of my skin. Miserable, I feel like dirt on the floor. My despair weighs me down like an anchor. Um, Tranquil, I feel at peace with myself. These are all such creative and metaphorical and figurative ways to talk about our emotions. And why I think this is an important writing practice is because being able to connect with that sort of X factor of emotion that makes it sort of different than just saying I'm sad. But when we're saying, I'm sad like a starving dog, being able to put some sort of figurative or metaphorical label on something can make it feel, in a weird way, so much more real, so much more relatable. We can feel so much more connected to an image when we, or excuse me, so much more connected to an emotion when we feel like we have an image and a description and a metaphor for it. So I encourage this as a practice. If you're having trouble, you're feeling something, you're not sure how to describe it, and you can't find the right word, don't look for the right word, look for a way of saying it. If you're really frustrated, but you can't tell you're frustrated, but you can express that you feel like you're a volcano bubbling over, that is still a great way to use sort of creative writing and thinking to access an emotion. So, this idea of labeling emotions is so powerful. If you are able to put a label on it, suddenly you can understand it better. You can embrace it, pull it in, push it away. But there's a huge difference between a nebulous feeling inside and a nebulous feeling inside. But I know that I can call that serenity and become more in touch with it. So, as a writing practice, just writing down how we are feeling in metaphor. And it doesn't have to be in a metaphor, too. It can be a little more straightforward, but just being able to write down different labels for emotions, keep a page in the journal and just each day it's like, today I felt like a cloud, you know, today I felt like a crashed computer. And just being able to do this brings you closer to your emotions in a really exciting way. Um, Great. We'll move on to this next skill of emotional intelligence, expressing emotions, right? So, skillful emotional expression means knowing how and when to express emotions with different people and different contexts. So, when you translate your real feelings and thoughts into language, like writing itself, physical and mental health often improve. And I've gone through a bit of this, but sort of allowing yourself to genuinely express emotions, whether that's through speaking or writing or some sort of activity. There are jobs in physician visits, increased immune function, decreased blood pressure, long-term improvements in mood, reductions in stress, higher grades, shorter periods of unemployment. Right. So expressing our emotions genuinely without sort of masking them can really lead to very practical, straightforward, we're feeling better, um, better attend school and work even. So emotional labor is when we change our emotional expression. And this is not so good. It can sort of burn us out. And I think it may be something that we experience a lot, particularly as caregivers, that sort of that pressure to be chipper and helpful can lead to some emotional labor. There are a few different kinds. Masking is communicating an emotion that's entirely different from what you're feeling. So you say, "Oh, I'm feeling happy." You're feeling sad. Inhibition is giving the expression of having no feelings when you're actually feeling something, acting like you don't care about something when you really care about it. Simulation is pretending to feel an emotion you're not actually feeling, pretending to feel excited when really you have no excitement in you. Intensification is giving the impression of having stronger feelings than you actually do. Maybe you act way angrier than you are, just to make a point or make sure someone, takes you seriously. And de-intensification have weaker feelings than you actually do. So, playing it off, oh, I don't care that you dinged my car, when maybe you really do care. So for this exercise, this is more self-reflection, and this is one of the writing activities I encourage all the time, as sort of a self-reflective emotional journaling. So choose an instance of emotional labor and just write a few sentences about a time that you did that sort of emotional labor, a time you masked, or a time that you simulated. Um, and just really think, what emotion were you expressing outwardly, but what emotion were you actually feeling inside? And then, why did you do this for emotional labor? It's no one's a bad person for masking or simulating or inhibiting. We all do it. It's natural. And we want to understand what sort of is driving us to do it. And then, how did you feel after you did the emotional labor? Was it helpful, or did it make you feel worse? Did you come up feeling the same? There are no right or wrong answers, but just sort of exploring, okay, let me reflect on how I actually expressed my emotions today, can really bring us in touch with them. So these may be more personal. So if you're brave enough to share in the chat, of course, I won't share any names or stuff. And I think it would be lovely to hear what people have to say in the chat. But if it's more personal, you don't have to put it in the chat. And I'll just give sort of a space here for quiet reflection on this emotional labor. So I'll give you all a few minutes, and no need to post in the chat if it's too personal. If you want to share, we'd be more than happy to listen and support you. Okay, I got a couple of really poignant answers in the chat. we'll give you all another minute or two to sort of finish up your own writing. If more folks want to share in the chat, they're welcome to. And then we'll reflect. All right. I want to share a few of these because you guys are all very smart. I can tell there's already a good baseline of emotional intelligence here. So these forms of emotional labor, becoming aware that we're doing them is one of sort of the most powerful things because it takes us again from that sort of confused nebulous space to concrete, like I'm doing something emotionally and I realize I'm doing it, and realizing that can really help. um, One person said, doing all these forms of emotional labor to spare the emotions of the other person, but afterwards it feels vacant and disappointing. So we're doing it because we want to protect someone. Similarly, masking concern to a loved one about his health problems to let him stay independent, even though I think he's wrong in his approach. You might not have acknowledged until you wrote it down that you're masking that concern. Um, Someone says that they mask emotions because it's how they were raised. Don't hurt someone else's feelings with your problems. No one really wants to know how you're feeling. So sometimes we're like, okay, I'm masking my emotions, um, and I'm doing it because I don't want to put them on anyone. That's a burden they don't need to take on. And maybe didn't realize how much we were keeping ourselves from putting emotions or from feeling like we're putting emotions on other people. Someone says simulation acting glad to run an old friend that you had a past disagreement with and hope to never see again. I love this one because these aren't all horrible, severe, serious things. Simulation, it's a bit of emotional labor, but that probably saved you from an awkward social encounter. You want to just be aware of these things, not necessarily, condemning them every single time. Um, let's see, we have quite a few. We have some de-intensifying feelings when people are sad because we don't want others to feel bad too. So we've had a lot of reflections here that are sort of others focused, that we are, how do I say this? Doing our emotional labor because we think it is what others need. And I don't want to give anyone a right or wrong answer than that because everyone has their own unique situations. But becoming aware by sort of writing about it, okay, here's what I am feeling, here's what I'm saying I'm feeling, and just putting the words to it can really help us understand the situation, where we are, where we want to go. So I really love so many great answers here, very engaged. And I can tell you all are putting some thought into the writing here. And that's really sort of the baseline goal, is not just, you know, jotting something down, half thought about, but really reflecting on the emotion and giving yourself a chance to put it into words. So I want to talk now a bit about regulating emotions. So here's how we sort of conquer the emotional labor. Regulating emotions, we do stuff to prevent or reduce unwanted emotions. Maybe we want to initiate a desired emotion. I want to feel good today. What I'm going to do to regulate my emotions so I feel good. Or we also may try to maintain or enhance emotions. So emotions we're already in, and we're like, keep it going, make it bigger. How do I stay this calm or this happy? Or maybe how do I stay this tired? Because we need to sleep soon, so I don't want to rile myself up. So there are a lot of helpful and also a lot of unhelpful strategies to regulate emotions. I'll sort of gloss them just a bit. There are thought strategies, so ways we sort of modify our thinking to help regulate our emotions. And these are great ones too because you can go and write them down. So mindfulness, positive self-talk, positive reappraisal, acceptance, visualization, humor, distraction. Writing, you can almost think as a form of visualization. You're putting onto the page these things. And then there are also some more behavioral ones. Breathing, food, sleep, and exercise. You can sort of throw writing as a healthy habit in right there. consistently writing about our emotions as sort of a constructive activity. And there are also some unhelpful emotional regulation strategies that we resort to sometimes because they feel easier. Things like negative self talk, procrastination, avoidance, denial, suppression, yelling, screaming, physical aggression. And as you can see here, a lot of these are sort of on the flip side of writing, right? So, wishful thinking, ignoring, suppression, denial, we're not putting words to these things. We're not writing it down. We're not journaling. We're not doing anything of that sort. And so, writing is a really sort of great active strategy because it doesn't let us do these unhelpful strategies. You can't be ignoring the emotion of the problem if you're writing about it. So we can think of writing as a really sort of active action strategy to grab onto our emotions. So again, here, unhelpful strategies, not a lot of effort. We disengage. They don't solve the problem. Um, Helpful strategies, you have to practice them, right? You're not just going to sort of passively write because it happens. You have to sit down and say, I'm going to write about these things. And you need to engage and plan, but it's very solution focused too. It's not, oh, I'm just writing and things will get, whatever, I'm just doing the writing. In doing the writing, you are coming up with a solution for understanding and managing that emotion. So I want to focus on one helpful strategy as our last activity, and it's positive reappraisal. So it's simply writing things or saying them in a different way. Instead of why did he blow up at me for no reason, what a jerk, it's take the high road, respond with kindness. And then it must be something else that's triggering him right now. How can I help him feel less angry? So it's the same situation. We're not denying anything. We're not bending the truth. But what we're doing is we're rephrasing in a positive light. This, I think, is maybe the most powerful writing strategy. If you can sit down and write to yourself, write the really angry negative thought, and then see how you can reframe it. So our last exercise, choose one of the sentences on the right, or come up with your own, and practice positive reappraisal. Reframe, rephrase, so it's still true, but it's coming from a positive light. And again, we can sort of be dropping those into the chat as we go. So for example, number 2, I'm never going to be able to write this proposal. A positive reappraisal might be, this is a great chance for me to work on my procrastination, not procrastination skills, but this is a great chance for me to conquer my procrastination. Or this is an exciting opportunity to sort of expand my writing talents and skills. So the same situation, but in a positive light. So we'll take another however many minutes, reappraise one or more of these sentences, and pop them into the chat, and I'll read out some of the ones that are really working. Okay. Some really great ones here. I'll start reading them off. You can keep putting in the chat as you come up with them. So for number 7, I'm just trying to help him. Why is he being so frustrating? Reappraisal. I should consider all the things he's going through and consider how I would handle them in his shoes. Offer some ideas. A little action item there. That's great. For the proposal one, we have, well, I can just word vomit on a page and that'll get me unstuck and reorganize my thoughts. Or we have, maybe this is a good chance to ask others for opinions to what to include in this proposal to get me started, right? So sort of moving away from I'm stuck to how am I going to unstick? You're praising number 5, who would ever want to hang out with someone as boring as me. I'm setting a personal goal to cultivate friends with similar interests as me so we can spend quality time together. Right, just sort of recognizing, hey, here's who I am and here's what I want in my friendships, and we're not going to sort of frame it in that negative light. We have, why is no one responding to my resume? Someone reframing as, in the midst of the pandemic, it's challenging for all and especially job seekers. Absolutely, right? We can feel so down on ourselves and, be able to rephrase it and realize, okay, this maybe isn't exactly about me and who I am as a person. We have a lot for number 7. What can I help him do to not feel so frustrated? Or I think he's really scared and not yet ready to address his problems. Or perhaps he doesn't want my help, but wants to figure it out himself. Maybe he's frustrated he didn't figure it out himself. Maybe he's not there yet. I need to give him space and time, right? So we've really been able to, there we go. We've really been able to take the exact same situation and just by putting the words to it in a different lens, it feels like it's a brand new situation. So I really am loving all these rephrasings you're doing. And this, you can do it writing. You can do it pencil and paper. You can think it. Even keep a note on your phone of just writing out, here's how I'm going to think about it. Maybe there's a trusted partner or loved one or friend where you can text this to them. That's still a form of writing. Maybe just texting like, hey, I'm trying not to be frustrated right now because I realize that maybe he's just having trouble accepting help. And your friend says, that makes so much sense. Thanks for sharing. Wonderful. So I think you all really got a great handle on that. That does sort of take us towards a bit of wrapping up. The major takeaways from here, our emotions are really important, and developing emotional intelligence is incredible for our health and wellness, especially as caregivers when you're at such high risk for burnout. Developing emotional intelligence can really protect your physical and mental health. But it has to be developed as an active practice. So think about recognize, understand, label, express, regulate. And for each of those, being able to write towards that goal. Like, okay, I want to sort of recognize what emotions I'm feeling. I'm going to write what's going on in my body, what behaviors I'm doing, what facial expressions I have going on. Or maybe we want to label and we're like, I'm feeling something, I don't know. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm feeling like the way a hurricane feels. And we find the right label for us, and suddenly we feel so much more in touch with it, right? And you can do this for all 5 skills. And writing really becomes just a way to actively engage with these emotions and the 5 skills. So that sort of takes us to the end of our presentation, but now we have Q&A session that other Rob is going to run us through. So there we are.
Great. Thank you so much, Rob. We so appreciate you sharing all of your knowledge and experience with us, helping us to understand how we can use writing to deal with all of these emotions that we have as caregivers. Caregiving is hard. Let's be blunt and honest. It is hard, and it is consuming. And having an outlet to get that out of here and get it out so that we can continue with our journey is fantastic. Rob, if I can ask you to unshare your screen for me real quick, I am going to attempt to show a very quick video. We've had a request for this one. We tried to share it yesterday and I had technical issues, so we're going to try it one more time. It is from one of our sponsors at Mara Group, and it is really a lovely story. While we're showing this video with the story, it's your chance now as participants to type in your other questions that you have for Rob. When we come back from it, we are going to talk about your questions and give you the answers to those. So let's see if we can make this one work.
The first day home, there were many things that happened, but I'll tell you this one. I went in and out of this door 4 times just because I could. Carol has more motivation some days than I have ever thought of having.
She sets a goal for herself and she's able to accomplish that.
She's resilient. I got wonderful experiences in my life. I found my passport.
You did.
You're gonna love the picture.
Oh, well.
But I was not right in my heart with myself.
It's a hard time.
I have spent all of my life searching for ways to deal with life. Why do I need food so much to feel okay about life?
When we met her, she was in a nursing facility.
I was very big.
Carol had significant health issues, kidney failure, depression.
She was bedbound, she was incontinent, she had heart failure. I had 2 syringes filled with insulin. I had 2 medicine cups filled with pills. I was 547 pounds.
There were days when I would go in there and I didn't know if that was the last time I would see you.
Before I got the help that I needed, I had just decided to give up on life. I was just gonna die.
Some would look at her in a nursing facility and not develop the plans that we did with her and not think that she could be where she's at today. To make it work, we have to understand what support they have and need. And it starts with listening first.
I was so long not heard.
We use our person-centered approach to identify their goals, their desires, and then help put the services and supports in place that will help them achieve that.
She was struggling to find her voice, and person-centered is all about that person's voice.
Here's somebody that comes into my world, listening to me, talking to me about possibilities, just truly caring. And gave me a sense of personhood, a human being, not a case.
She had to have her own motivation. Things like losing weight takes a lot of individual tenacity, but not something somebody can do for you. So we did it with her, but she had to be in the driver's seat. So when we first talked with Carol, we didn't start a lot of plans for her to transition out of the nursing facility because she wasn't ready. So it first started with us talking to her and her mentally preparing.
The first time that I mentioned going home to her, a light came on, but she had a lot of questions. My first reaction was, me go home? No, I don't think so. But then all night long, I thought about it. And then one day I said, I'm ready to make changes in my food.
We need to meet people where they are. And so your goals have to be set where they're realistic and things that you can physically do at that time.
We went from bedbound to jerry chair, from a jerry chair to a wheelchair, until eventually she met me at front doors sometimes.
Every individual that we can support who then no longer needs our help but can help others, it's why we do what we do.
Isn't that love? I mean, that's love, when you get someone to the point where you no longer need them anymore. I know it was your job, but you bring yourself to your job and your heart to your job. And so for me, I'll just always love you.
We coordinate with the nursing facilities, we coordinate personal care in the home, whatever it is that will help that individual live independently and successfully.
I was given a certain number of hours a week for home health aides. It helped me to feel like I was contributing to my family, which at that time I couldn't have done by myself. And that is nothing but confidence building.
She progressed enough that, as she says, she graduated from the program. one of our largest goals in providing long-term services and supports is to bring somebody into the community. So it's the meaningful life that we want to help people achieve. The amount that she's paying forward right now is incredible.
Hi, my name is Carol. I'm calling to see how Miss Jackie is doing today. It just has opened my eyes to our interdependence as a humanity. I love to smile at people and connect with them. We really, truly are all each other has. Everything tastes sweeter, is sweeter in my life.
Isn't that a great story? I really, really love that. And I wanted to show that video not only because Merit Group is one of our sponsors helping us to bring you the conference today, but it really does relate, Rob, what we've been talking about today with identifying yourself as an individual. As caregivers, we often get lost in our own individuality. We become Dad's caregiver instead of being Rob. And we feel like we give up a lot of ourself and the things that we enjoy and the things that made us who we are, and in our we identify as who we are, the activities, the things that we like to do, because as our caregiving journey continues, and it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, so it builds as it goes, we start losing a lot of the things that we had as individuals. And I think that is something that using writing can help us stay connected with that, because our caregiving journey is not infinite. It will end at some point, and when it does, we need to be able to go back to being Rob and all the things that we continue to like to do and to appreciate, even though we during our caregiving journey didn't have the time to do all of them. And so being able to journal and being able to write helps us stay connected to who we are as we're continuing in this role as a caregiver. Got a couple of questions here from folks that want to talk about. We have one person in particular who really expressed so well, I think, what everybody as a caregiver feels, saying that they were feeling frustrated, tired, and constantly getting depressed. Understand that 100% as a fellow caregiver. Asking, how do I simply get started to start reaching that cathartic realization and that release? How do I just grab a notebook and or sit at my computer and just start to write? What is step number one for someone who has not done this before? How do I just start? And then where do I go from there?
Absolutely. Well, I think there are sort of two starting points. There's sort of like the mental start and then the practical start. And I think the mental start is recognizing that these feelings are sort of, they're real and they're concrete and they're finite. I think sometimes what makes frustration so frustrating and scary and overwhelming is we don't know where, like, it feels limitless. We don't know where it starts, we don't know where it ends. And so being able to be like, I'm frustrated, that's a concrete, finite thing, that sort of mental adjustment, I think, is sort of the first step. In terms of the first practical writing step, I really encourage doing whatever feels most low stakes to you. So I actually text myself on my own phone when I want to keep little notes. And it's so low pressure because I don't feel like I'm opening up a Word document. I need to like save the file and name it and use grammar. No, I'm not even talking to someone else. It's just me. And I just want to get those words written down so I can see it. I'm not even on the page. You could become a fabulous writer and never actually even have a notebook because you have your phone, you have your laptop, whatever sort of equipment. But so figuring out a way to make it seem low stakes for you. I know it can be like, this whole sort of big poetry world, very scary and out there. Writing down like one sentence on your phone before you go to bed, like, today I felt, and the actual word. And that's all it is. It can be the shortest little label. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but just starting by actually putting the words out there, finding the right words to say it, that once you take that step, everything sort of follows. So that's what I encourage. Figure out a way to make it low stakes for yourself.
That's great advice, because it is kind of scary to think about, I'm going to sit down and write about how I feel. Well,
Yes.
I've been burying how I feel so I can get through this day, and now I'm going to allow it to actually bubble up and come out. I don't know if I can deal with that emotionally after the day that I've had. So yeah, I love that. Whatever is safest for you to do. What if you get that proverbial writer's block? You're just stuck. You've got your inside bubbling, but you can't get anything to come out onto the page or onto there. How do you unstick yourself? One person had a suggestion, said what they do is they just kind of vomit words out onto their computer. They just start typing words, and eventually it kind of unsticks and it starts to form into something more cohesive. As a writer yourself, how do you unstick yourself?
Again, I think it's a mental step, which is you can't get mad at yourself for being stuck, because none of us can be, writing is my whole trading career. And as much as I would love to, I can't be writing every second of the day because my brain goes through different things. So reframing stuckness as not a bad thing, not a wrong thing, just, okay, I don't have the words to say it right now. Even that is information, because then you're realizing I'm feeling something, I don't have the words for it, I'm stuck. Noticing that, acknowledging it, and then maybe you'll start to, because you don't have the words, over the next day or two, you're sort of thinking it over, you're like, okay, I think maybe I'm starting to realize, like, this is actually, I'm feeling confused, or maybe I'm like, actually, I guess I'm feeling apathetic, but not sort of condemning yourself or judging yourself for not having the words, taking that info and sort of letting the words come as they will.
And just that simple act of doing helps you emotionally as well.
Absolutely.
One person says that they really like using notes on their phone, and they love voice to text. I think that's a great idea too. That's a wonderful technique. Got a couple of questions specifically about creative writing workshops, class options in the area. One person in particular, is there an opportunity to take any of the ruler training? Tell us a little bit about Badger Dog and that program with the public library.
Yeah, absolutely. So Badger Dog is run through the Austin Library Foundation, and they offer a huge range of classes. They have a ton of summer camps for sort of K through 12, but then during the summer and school year, there are adult workshops. There are workshops specific to genres like poetry, fiction, nonfiction, workshops sort of centered around reading a book together. There are themed ones. I taught this presentation as a week-long class earlier this summer. So if you just search up Badger Dog, the Library Foundation, all the classes too are taught by professional writers, people who are really here to be excited and passionate about writing. So that's Badger Dog, and that's in Austin, but everything is remote offerings right now. So even if you're a little further out, this is actually a great time to get to do one of those classes. In terms of ruler stuff, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence is sort of the hub where they have done most of the sort of empirical work in EI and stuff like that. So if you go to their website, they have opportunities to bring ruler training into schools and workplaces, but they also just have a lot of basic materials there. So poking around there, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, that is a really great resource. There's also a mood meter app, which is, I think it's like $1, but all it really does is sends you notifications throughout the day where you can plot yourself on that colored grid. And that's a huge thing because it's like, again, very minimal. It's like, I'm just going to put a word on it for this moment right here. So I think that's a great resource too, even if it's less formal than a ruler training. But lots of good resources, Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence.
Fantastic. We are currently at our 11:30 point. We had someone who asked for, and I'm typing right here very quickly, asked for how to spell badger dog so they know how to find it. And I'm going to share that right now with all of the panelists. It's basically the two words, badger and dog put together. That's it. Also, Austin, is a creative hub and one of the largest in the nation. So you can always Google for creative writing groups in the area. Meetup.com is also a great place to go, and you can search there to find groups of every interest under the sun, but there are always lots of great writers groups that you can find there. Rob Colgate, thank you so much for sharing the morning with us, sharing your expertise, wonderful ideas and suggestions on how we as caregivers can get everything from in here out so that we can continue our journey feeling good about who we are and what we're doing. We appreciate that so much. For all of our participants, thank you so much for joining us these 3 days for the Williamson County Caregiver Conference. We obviously are not done for this year. We have more workshops coming up throughout the year. We have one coming up in October on Medicare 101. Open enrollment's coming up. So if you are the person who is helping mom, dad, husband, wife with their Medicare, Medicaid, it's going to be a fantastic session. We're going to talk about what is going to be changing for next year, what you need to know about open enrollment, which is coming up in October through December, so that you can make your best choices. We also have the Pflugerville Seniors Conference coming up in October. We're going to do 4 days, again, virtual, of great presentations on financial considerations as you age, how to pay for long-term care. We have some of the medical professionals from Baylor Scott and White Health who are going to talk about COVID, where we are now, what's coming down the line, what we think is going to happen. We're going to talk about if and when we're going to get a vaccine and what will happen from that point. Brilliant, fabulous information. And then Casey Lawrence from Aegis Central Texas is going to talk about brain health, and in particular, is memory loss a normal part of aging? Spoiler alert, no, it's not. So we're going to talk about how you maintain your brain health. Wonderful opportunities for you, but most importantly, I want to leave you with this today, and that is to always remember that organizations like Aegis Central Texas are here for you to help you in your journey. The majority of our services are free. We have some paid programming, but if you are in a stuck spot and you don't know how to move forward, call us, email us, get in touch with us, let us help you, because that's why we exist, is to help you in your caregiving journey, no matter where you are in that journey. And always remember, there is absolutely no shame ever in asking for help, because no one really teaches us how to do this as caregivers. And there's always going to be something that comes up that we have no idea what to do. That's why organizations like this exist, is to help you get unstuck, get over that writer's block, to get past that hump, and to help you and give you all the tools that you need. So we appreciate you so much joining us today. We hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and we will see you again very soon with one of our next sessions. Rob Colgate, thank you again so much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful rest of your week.